If you're looking for a wireless robotic mower that costs no more than $1,000, mows in parallel lines, and has good obstacle detection, then today's video is just right for you. I've pitted the two wireless value-for-money robotic mowers, the Ecovacs GOAT G1 and the Navimow I-Series from Segway, against each other for you. What do both devices have to offer in comparison? How do they perform in practice? And which robotic mower is suitable for your garden? We'll get to the bottom of these questions in today's video. So let's start right after the intro. If you haven't done so already, subscribe to this channel now and activate the bell to never miss a video again. You can find the current prices of the robots to support this channel in the video description below. Thank you very much for your support, and now let's get started after the intro. Both devices mow in parallel lines, have good obstacle detection, similar area performance, and cost just under $1,000. This undoubtedly sounds very promising, but it's anything but helpful when it comes to choosing one of the two robots. In today's video, I've created a detailed comparison of both devices to find out what advantages and disadvantages both robotic mowers have to offer and which one is ultimately right for you. It's important to mention beforehand that I've already presented and extensively tested both robotic mowers in detail. If you haven't seen the individual videos yet, you can find them now on the info card on the top right or on my channel. It's definitely worth watching them again. Okay, so let's dive directly into the comparison. At first glance, there isn't much of a difference between the two devices. Both have a solid plastic chassis that not only looks robust, but also gives a high-quality impression in terms of workmanship. The dimensions of the housings are quite similar, with the displayed measurements showing that the GOAT G1 is only marginally longer. Similarly, the GOAT's weight is slightly higher at 13.36 kilograms compared to 10.9 kilograms for the Navimow, which, in my opinion, doesn't bring any significant advantage or disadvantage since both devices can be easily carried or transported thanks to the integrated handles on the housing. The major advantage both devices offer is that their housings are certified according to IPX6 and can therefore be easily cleaned with a garden hose, saving us a lot of effort in everyday life. If we take a critical look at the side view of the robots, we will immediately notice the first major difference, the drive wheels. Both robotic mowers, compared to other previously tested devices, as shown in the graphic, fortunately have very large drive wheels with a diameter of 220 and 240 millimeters, respectively, as well as two small steering rollers on the underside for better maneuverability. So no significant difference in that regard. Both variants also have a sufficiently large tread to develop enough grip on the lawn surface, even on slightly muddy ground. However, the decisive difference lies in the position of the wheels. As you can see, the GOAT has the drive wheels at the back, while the Navimow has them at the front, which makes a big difference on slopes. The result is that while the GOAT pushes itself up the slope, the drive wheels on the Navimow pull it up. Especially on slopes over 30%, the latter is not beneficial and causes the Navimow to skid more quickly than the GOAT. Specifically, as shown in the graphic, the Navimow can handle slopes up to 30% at best, whereas the rear-driven GOAT can handle up to 45%. So if you have larger slopes in your garden, you should lean towards the GOAT, or take a closer look at the already tested high-end robot Luba 2. The link to the video is on the info card at the top right or on my channel. Another important point regarding the off-road capability of the robots is how they handle uneven terrain, since not every lawn is like a golf course. Thanks to the large wheels and the coarse tread, which both models also have, they can handle medium-sized unevenness and slightly muddy ground. The only disadvantage I could find is that due to the deep skirt of the GOAT, the robotic mower tends to get stuck more easily. If the steering rollers sink into holes in the lawn and the robot's skirt touches the ground, the device can get stuck. The only remedy here is to fill in the uneven spots on the lawn in the long term. The Navimow performs slightly better in this regard due to its front-wheel drive. If the steering rollers get caught in holes and the robot gets stuck at the back, the drive wheels simply pull the whole device out again. As you can see, both devices clearly have their pros and cons regarding off-road capability, which need to be weighed individually. If we look at the maximum area performance that can be managed, another point becomes clear as to why both devices are so suitable for a direct comparison. Both robotic mowers are designed for medium-sized gardens. The Navimow comes in two variants, one with 500 and another with 800 square meters. The Goat, on the other hand, has three variants with 800, 1600, and 2000 square meters. The larger the area capacity, the higher the price logically is. The cheapest device in the test is the 500 square meter variant of the Navimow for around $1,000. If you want the 800 square meter variant, you need to add about $200 more. The smallest version of the Goat with 800 square meters costs around $1,100, and if you're willing to spend another $200, you can get the next larger variant with 1,600 square meters. Price-wise, we're in the range of $1,000 to a maximum of $1,300. You can find the current prices in the video description below. It's worth mentioning that the 2,000 square meter variant of the Goat costs almost twice as much and is therefore unsuitable for this comparison. Rather, a comparison with the already tested Mammotion Luba 2 would be more appropriate, as it also plays in a higher league. For this reason, I'm referring exclusively to the two mid-range models, which show no difference in terms of area capacity. However, it is very important to mention that the devices cannot cover the specified areas of 800 square meters in one go, as this depends on various factors such as cutting width, mowing efficiency, possible obstacles, and battery capacity. From experience, I can say that both devices achieve a similar mowing performance of around 100 square meters per hour on a relatively even surface with few obstacles, which is quite good. Regarding battery capacity, the 800 square meter Goat has a 72 watt-hour battery, and the 1800 square meter Navimow has a 110 watt-hour battery, which means it operates a few minutes longer before heading back to the charging station. Specifically, the Navimow achieves a runtime of about 2 hours, while the Goat can be expected to run for about 1.5 hours. After charging, both devices resume from the position where they last stopped, making the mowing process very efficient. Speaking of efficiency, let's take a closer look at the cutting width of the robotic mowers. As shown in the graphic, the Goat has a blade disc with a 220 mm diameter, while the Navimow only has 180 mm. Thus, the cutting width of the Goat G1 is slightly larger, but this is compensated in practice by the larger battery of the Navimow. Another difference relates to the suspension of the blade disc. As you can clearly see in the video, the Goat has a floating mower deck, whereas the Navimow has everything fixed in place. This offers the practical advantage that the mower deck remains movable on very uneven lawn surfaces, thus preventing accidental scalping of the grass. Regarding the cutting height, both lawn mowers are quite similar. Neither device in this price range has an electric height adjustment like the Luba. Instead, it's done entirely manually using a knob on the top. Both lawn robots allow for several intermediate settings. However, as you can see in the graphic, the maximum cutting height is identical at 60 mm. There's only a small difference in the minimum cutting height. While the Goat can be set to a minimum of 30 mm, which in my opinion is completely sufficient, the Navimow allows a cutting height as low as 20 mm. So if you want to bring your lawn to golf course level, the Navimow is a tad better suited. One of the most crucial points in deciding between the two robots is their operating principle, or the way they navigate on the lawn. In this regard, both devices rely on boundary-free navigation but use entirely different technical approaches. Let's simply and concisely look at the main advantages and disadvantages of both variants in this section. Starting with the Navimow. This is a classic GPS RTK lawn robot like the Luba, whose positioning is determined by receiving satellite signals from the sky. In conjunction with the GNSS antenna, which provides the robot with additional correction signals, the device can achieve positioning accuracy within a few centimeters under optimal conditions. The most important requirement for this system to function smoothly is obviously an unobstructed view of the sky and as many visible satellites as possible. From practical experience, I can say this system works really well if these criteria are met. The antenna is placed in an unobstructed position and the lawn area is not heavily shaded. However, if your garden has many large trees or buildings nearby, some satellite signals will be blocked, reducing positioning accuracy. As you can clearly see in my case, while the Navimow moves in parallel lines, it wobbles slightly due to many large trees growing around the lawn area. With even greater obstruction, it can sometimes fail to determine an exact position and not start mowing. I extensively tested how well the Navimow's positioning works in practice in a separate video for you. On the other hand, we have the GOAT. This device doesn't rely on GPS technology, but on ultra-wideband UWB. This is a technology that has been used in the industry for many years to enable precise positioning both indoors and outdoors. That's right, the GOAT's technology can be used indoors without any problems, which means it doesn't need a clear view of the sky or any satellites. Thus, the GOAT is completely independent in this regard, using multiple transmitters called beacons for orientation instead. For the mower to calculate its position accurately to the centimeter on the lawn, the beacons must be positioned correctly according to the shape of the garden. I've explained in detail how these beacons need to be positioned and what to consider in separate videos about the GOAT. From practical experience, I can say that positioning is not a problem for simple and medium-sized lawns and works flawlessly. However, for very complex lawns with many widely separated zones, you would need multiple beacons since they should not be more than 45 meters apart. Additionally, obstacles like trees or buildings should not be between the beacons, which imposes certain limitations. Not to mention the visual factor, as the white housing of the beacon stands out in every corner of the garden, which might not be to everyone's liking. Overall, I can say that both devices, when the above conditions are met, mow consistently and reliably in precise parallel lines, which not only looks great but is also extremely efficient. Based on the positioning technology, let's move on to the topic of multi-zone management, which, fortunately, both devices handle very well with some minor limitations. The difference is as follows. With the Navimow, the individual zones are set up one after another by driving the robot around the boundaries of each area and saving them. This allows us to create up to 12 different zones and manage them independently, which works perfectly. With the GOAT, things work a bit differently. First, we drive around the entire lawn to map it, and only then can we divide the large area into several individual zones. The device allows us to create up to 16 zones, slightly more than the Navimow. Besides the fact that 12 or 16 zones are definitely more than enough for most gardens, I find the workflow on the Navimow a bit more pleasant compared to the GOAT, but this could also be a matter of getting used to it. Additionally, after mapping, the GOAT needs to explore the area to familiarize itself, which takes a few minutes. The Navimow, on the other hand, is ready to use immediately. Overall, I think the Navimow offers a few more refinements, such as more detailed adjustment of the mowing direction in individual zones. On the other hand, we can set up restricted zones or no-go areas with both devices, which the robot will strictly avoid. This is useful, for instance, if you have wildflowers or other shrubs on the lawn that shouldn't be mowed over. Both devices allow the creation and management of numerous restricted zones in no time. Let's move on to the next important point: obstacle detection. Both devices use a camera mounted on the front to detect and navigate around obstacles. In both cases, these are wide-angle cameras that provide a particularly large field of view to detect obstacles slightly to the side of the robot. There are no additional ultrasonic sensors around or a bumper on the front. Instead, only the GOAT has an additional TOF sensor. In comparison to obstacle detection using the camera, which only matches the image in front of the mower to known patterns, i.e. obstacles, the TOF sensor works differently. It measures the time it takes for light to travel from the object, the obstacle, to the sensor, thus calculating the distance. Since light travels extremely fast, multiple signals can be processed in the same time, giving the GOAT a shorter reaction time and making it less susceptible to interference, such as shadows or light reflections. From practical experience, I can say that both mowers have good obstacle detection for large and medium-sized objects. For example, people, soccer balls, watering cans, and flower pots are safely detected and avoided. With smaller objects, it's a bit different. While the Navimow has almost perfect obstacle detection, recognizing even the smallest objects, like children's toys, dog toys, garden tools, and very importantly, small animals like hedgehogs, the GOAT still has some issues. By default, it doesn't reliably detect these smaller objects. However, it has an additional AI detection mode, which I highly recommend activating. This makes the detection much more precise, allowing it to reliably detect small objects like hedgehogs and garden hoses in my tests. In direct comparison, I can say that the GOAT's obstacle detection is definitely not bad, but the Navimow's is still a bit better since it reliably detects even very small objects. Lastly, a few words on the comparison of the cut-to-edge function or edge cutting of the robots. Similar to obstacle detection, this depends somewhat on the initial setup. For both robots, it's important to define during mapping whether the mower should leave a certain distance from the edge if it's raised, or if it can drive on the edge to achieve an edge-to-edge cut. From previous test videos, I can say that for raised edges, a distance of at least 10 centimeters is recommended, which means it will need to be mowed manually afterward. This ensures the devices don't get scratched or damaged. On the other hand, to fully mow the edge, you should let the devices drive halfway on the boundary. Since the blade disc is in the middle for both robots, their edge cutting functions are quite similar. They may not be perfect, but achieve very good results if there is an existing mowing edge. Alright, we've now thoroughly compared both devices, so we can move on to the most important part, the conclusion. Below, I've summarized the key criteria for both devices, helping you determine which lawn robot is more suitable for you and your garden. Let's go! First, both devices are designed for small to medium-sized areas up to a maximum of 800 square meters. If you have a larger area, you should consider the 1600 square meter variant of the GOAT. Second, for Navimow, a highly complex lawn is not a problem. However, with the GOAT, the area should be as uniform as possible, or you may need to purchase additional beacons. Third, while the Navimow only requires the station and the antenna, the GOAT needs multiple beacons to be placed around the garden. If you don't like the look of this, you should opt for the Navimow. Fourth, in areas with heavy shading from tall trees or buildings, the Navimow struggles and tends to wobble. The GOAT, on the other hand, has no issues and can mow precisely even under tall trees. Fifth, due to its front-wheel drive, the Navimow can only handle small inclines and slips more easily on wet or muddy ground than the GOAT. The GOAT can handle moderate inclines without any problem. Sixth, both mowers can handle uneven terrain fairly well due to their large wheels. However, deep holes are more problematic for the GOAT compared to the Navimow due to its low skirt. Seventh, the GOAT G1 can manage up to 16 zones, while the Navimow can only handle 12. However, the zone management on the Navimow is a bit more detailed. Eighth, the GOAT's obstacle detection is sufficient to protect small to medium-sized objects and small animals when the AI mode is activated. However, the Navimow's detection is still slightly better, reliably identifying even very small objects. Alright, that's it. I hope this video helps you in making your decision. Which mower did you choose and why? Let me know in the comments. You can find the current prices of the devices to support this channel in the video description below. Thank you very much for your support. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up to help it grow. If you haven't already, subscribe to this channel and activate the bell so you don't miss any new videos. Stay healthy, take care, and see you next time. Goodbye.